All right, here we are, Facebook Live, number 2. I'm Julian David, product expert, product specialist, and content manager here at Townsend Labs. Thank you all for joining this once again on this Saturday. I'm super stoked about our guest today. Thanks to all of you for contributing, for keeping the conversation alive as usual. So yeah, we have a good program for you today, and I'm excited about it. I also want to take a minute to just welcome a bunch of new members in this group. It's been a real pleasure to see this group grow in the past month. People from all over the world. It's just really great to see what folks are doing with the microphone, the questions that we get, and all of that. So keep those questions and contributions coming. It's always great to see what you guys are up to. I remember there was a question just this past week, I think, from somebody, whether it's okay to share stuff that you've done with the Sphere mic in the group. And, I commented on it, and yes, absolutely. It's totally cool to share what you've been up to, especially when it's something that's a little bit out of the ordinary. It's always great as long as it doesn't get spammy or whatever. I think everybody knows when it gets spammy and when it's too much. I mean, if you're going to be posting every day with a new track you've recorded, I mean, good for you that you have that much output going. But let's just keep it within reason. And I think everybody's game for that. And I'm a music lover. I know there are a lot of folks out there who just love checking out music, especially these days. So keep those contributions coming. It's always cool to see what's going on. Also, I want to mention a big thank you to all of you guys who have submitted Spotify tracks. We did this call for contributions 2 weeks ago, and we got a lot of tracks submitted, which is the reason why we need a little bit of time to kind of weed through it and figure out what goes where and all of that. And we'll be announcing those people or those tracks that have been chosen for those playlists. But I think overall it's just a great way to number one, discover music, and number two, hopefully get you guys a little bit more exposure out there. Oh, I see a comment. There's audio is doubling. Let's see why that is. Okay, Eric, not sure what's happening there. Can you guys give me a thumbs up if the audio is okay? Give me a thumbs up if the audio is good out there. Okay, Carlos, thank you. Cool. Seems like we're good. I mean, definitely let me know if there's an issue, but I don't think there should be. Better now? I think you're good to go? Okay. Cool. Well, it's always daunting to do these live streams because there's always stuff going on, and things go wrong. It's the internet, right? So let's just keep it going. Definitely, anytime there seems to be an audio issue, this is an audio live stream, so I don't want any weirdness going on. Definitely keep me posted if there's something that seems a little off, and we'll try to address it. So fingers crossed that everything goes well, and we'll take it from there. So yeah, I just want to mention, thank you for all those Spotify contributions. It's really just about getting you guys and your artists that you're working with a little bit more exposure, and also, giving people that are in the market for a great sounding condenser microphone a chance to check out Sphere and actually hear what it sounds like in a published track, and which I think is absolutely critical. So, we'll have playlists for rap and urban music. We'll have playlists for rock and pop and all of those great genres out there to really cover the bases. And then we'll share those Spotify playlists, on our social channels and on our website. And I think it's a great thing. And so keep those contributions and submissions coming. There's not going to be a cutoff or anything. We're always looking for new tracks to add to those playlists. So, even if you haven't submitted something yet, feel free to do that. And I'm totally stoked about checking all those tracks out. So I'm going to post that link one more time in the comments if you've missed it so far, just to make sure that everybody has that. So there we go. And we're also going to pull that in here so you can see it in the live stream. There you go. Nice. Cool. So I think that was enough of an intro for my part. because this is really not supposed to be about me or about what we've been up to. Well, we can talk about that towards the end maybe, but I know a lot of folks are here that are already watching that want to hear from Jason. So that's what we're going to do. And without further ado, I want to introduce Jason Cheese Goldberg here to this stream. Jason, how's it going? How you been?
Julian, how's it going?
I'm great.
Good. Good.
What have you been up to this past week? I know you're a busy man, so spill the beans.
Yeah, I got to bed at 6 in the morning last night. I got a cup of coffee, and
Good.
I have my trusty yellow Red Bull. If I was at a bar, we'd be double fisting. I've been, man, it's been such an exciting time. It's been crazy, with everything going on, but it's also been really exciting because I think in the past couple weeks we did an Oculus live show, via Oculus venues, and, and I've just been recording. I think I think I had a day off last month. So this week, this week's been pretty exciting. And with a couple artists, Trippy and Rich, going hard with Rich. We're working on so much stuff, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, you guys have been pretty much going nonstop with Rich the Kid, right?
Yeah, nonstop.
Yeah. So there
Nonstop.
actually there was a question here from that I want to pull in because it's a good opportunity, and this is from Melly Montana. How'd you get plugged in with folks like Rich the Kid? How did that get started?
Oh, it's a long story. to get plugged in with somebody like that. Where do I start? Well, I was 16 years old, and
really,
my buddy played guitar.
That's how they all start.
He wanted to join a band, so I picked up bass.
Right.
And then I got a 4-track tape machine, and I don't know if you find passion or if passion finds you, but I've been down that rabbit hole for the last 20 years. And I put in a lot of hours to be comfortable enough to work with somebody as talented as Rich, with those expectations. And so we've been going pretty strong since last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, how does something like that happen? Preparation. I have 20,000 hours maybe of technical assistance and all sorts of stuff under my belt. So late nights, first there, last to leave, and just constantly trying to learn and be better. And then I had a session, and it went well. And I asked him if he wanted to keep going, let him know I was available. And he said, how about we take a trip to Miami tomorrow? And I hopped on a jet, and we flew out to Miami and haven't stopped.
Yeah. And that was, when was that? When did that start? When did that start with Rich?
That was end of September.
Last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And then, so of course the latest record has basically you tracking the majority of the tracks, and I think mixing a couple of tunes as well on the Boss Man record. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. 4 of those.
Yeah.
A lot of them are really reference mixes straight from where we were at the times.
Right.
Some fine tuning, but so it sounds that he fell in love with, and they caught an energy.
So you just mentioned that that a lot of it kind of happens on the road, and this is something that I want to get into a little bit, because some of the folks out there have already seen sort of your setup template rundown, and we'll talk about that in more detail in just a moment. But I think I want to just kind of maybe ask you like what the process and tracking with Rich and a bunch of other folks as well is like these days, because when I got to know you, it was kind of like I started stalking your Instagram, and I kept seeing these images of you like being in hotel rooms and pretty much anything other than a recording studio and tracking. And then we started talking about it, and I realized that this is a completely different world than what I personally was used to. So you want to talk about that a little bit, like what that?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of studios mixed in. We're all over the place, from everywhere and in between. And so the professional facilities are still, a go-to for all the stuff that comes along with the music, right?
Yeah.
Lots of people and a space that's tailored to a good experience. We have everything we need in those places that make creativity easy. Mm-hmm. And we've also been just recording anywhere and everywhere, from tour buses to Airbnbs to
green rooms as well, right?
Green rooms. Yeah. It doesn't really matter this today, and it's so exciting for me because it adds a layer of excitement and challenge right off the bat. Which I feel like we face in studios as well. It's just a little different. Those challenges are a little bit tend to be getting a good start, just like it is when you enter a new space.
Yep.
Making sure that the audio is clean, right? So whether that's the channels, the gear, outboard gear, or even microphone itself, and making sure that bad tubes has been a thing lately. Just listening for crackles and pops and stuff within the chain. I don't have to worry about that in the spaces that we go into, because I have my my setup, which is the L22 and the Apollo, and then my rig. And so I don't have to worry about the technical so much. It makes it easy for me to look at the space and to create a feeling where we go, whether or not it's the YB record where we're all in Utah and we have the surrounding glass windows, or we're a suite in Vegas overlooking the strip, and setting up a place where you can feel something and in the moment.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So, it's kind of hard to believe that you're able to, cut professional records in some of these environments. And I want to switch to my screen here and see if I can pull in some of these shots.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's why it's so much fun. I was over at Tory Lane's place the other day, and he's like, "You don't want to go to the studio?" And Rich is like, "No, we're good." And so Tory ports to the living room. He's like, set up there, and it's this wood floor, huge space, maybe 30 feet long, and then you have the kitchen and the dining room all open. Right. And so I looked at the space in a second. You have seconds because you have to set up. So you need to analyze, just like all those good techs out there that have clients that come into a room and they have their computers or anything like that. You have to assess what you're working with. Are the keyboards getting set up? Do you need to put microphones out? And on the spot, you create an environment that's easy to work around, right, without getting in the way. And I think I take a lot of that into what I do in these spaces. So when I look at a space, I'll check for acoustics, right, which is always the hardest part.
Yeah.
And for that, I think what's helped me a lot is I've kind of created this little carrying case with 2 mic stands. Mm-hmm. And in those mic stands, I have the one mic stand for the microphone and another mic stand for a big plush blanket. And that plush blanket gets draped over the second one, kind of behind the mic. Yep. And that helps with the reflections. And then in the really bad spaces that are huge, I trust Kaotica. Mm-hmm. To kind of help me get me a more direct and dry sound. And
you're using the Kaotica, the Fat Boy, right? Because that's the one that fits the L22.
Boy, that's the one that's made with the L22 for sure.
I'm gonna show some shots here. So we're looking at the one with Rich and Famous Dex. That's a trailer, right? I think it's a makeup trailer.
Yeah, that was on the shoot. There was a couple tour buses, but I think that was the shoot for What I Like.
Yeah.
Which we did at an Airbnb. We recorded that at an Airbnb and on Sunset.
Right.
And that room was a nightmare too. That was marble floors and big space, but the record sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. You think you can totally overthink it and be like, oh, this is never going to work. But then, you're doing it and, you listen to the results and it's like, yeah, you can't tell. And of
it's
course.
It's a good point, though, overthinking. Because I used to do that when I was younger. I used to overthink everything because I didn't have the confidence and I wasn't sure that I would be able to tell the difference.
Right.
And I think that's a really important thing to do when you're starting is to overthink everything and to make a lot of mistakes before you can start, getting stuff to work properly.
Yeah.
But when you do build a little bit of confidence, knowing that sometimes those little things don't matter as much as you think they do, and you trust you trust the process and you get something good, and let that performance just come out as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean when we've talked in detail, in the video that's still to come out, what you said was all about. It's all about creating a vibe, letting a vibe happen, and making those artists feel comfortable, and because that's how they get inspired.
About recording 101.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
So there's an art to it for sure, which I pride myself on really being diligent on, and I've worked really hard to be a part of it. I'm a recording engineer. That's what I do. If you guys don't know, I don't know who's watching, but that's what I do. I'm a recording engineer, and I take pride in that. Because it's fun for me being in that moment, capturing, a record.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that performance is the most important.
Right. And so with these artists, I think what you've told me too is oftentimes, they'll give you a call. You'll need to be on a jet somewhere, and then you enter an Airbnb, whatever. You figure out the acoustics, and then you need to be able to set up in 10 minutes or so.
That's a lot of fun too. I'll put the computer on a coffee table. I'll grab 2 end tables, put them in front of the coffee table, throw the speakers on those, put the Apollo where I need it to go so I can reach it, make sure the mic's a good place where they're not going to trip up on it, run the cables, get the power going. And I have a really just consistent way that everything's plugged in and put back so that, and when I got it, I was over at a studio that I spent so many hours at, and we were over at Winmark, and in between the sessions I was working, I would be in the room just setting up the rig and tearing down the rig, and setting up the rig and tearing down the rig, and I did it a lot of times.
Just as a practice.
I probably, just to be because I really, nobody's ever been like, set up faster. And I'll be like, you set up faster, what do you mean? But it's a pretty fast process. I think we've had to rush to airplanes, and I've had 5 minutes to tear down and throw it in a van and then run onto an airplane as a gate was closing on me. But it's fast, but you have to identify what the plan is right when you start, right? This is the plan. Let's execute the plan, and then, there's so it's using what we have, if I need to make a desk, I'll go to the kitchen and grab a console table and bring it into the room. And now I can spread out the whole rig on that, and because all I come in with is a backpack and a Pelican case. And then I have my carrying case on my shoulder that I have the mic stands in. And that's the studio. And I walk in with that and use everything that's in the space.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's cool. Yeah, it's fun.
Do you, and this is maybe jumping forward a little bit, but do you feel like, that these spaces, like when it comes to the recording, some of that space also makes it into the recording? Because I'm imagining, I mean, you're not going to get like a super dry recording no matter what you do.
Of course. I mean, on a good example of that, I think, would be V12, the post record that we did. That's on
Boss Man as well. Yeah. Yeah.
And that space was so sweet sounding. It was a cabin vibe. So it was wood, and the reverb tail, as I listened and was positioning and was, I was doing my tests of reflection when I started to check the ambience, and I was like, wow, this could be a preset reverb that I use, because no matter where you are, the room's going to be captured in the recording, right? I mean, we can do a lot of stuff today within the processing of vocal to where at some points I'm like, I don't care what mic I use or where it's recorded. It's going to sound cool, So I think that's also cool within the evolution of everything for specific genres. Yeah. I wouldn't record certain things that way. But for the most part, I haven't had to run into any problems. But yeah, to answer your question, the rooms play a part for sure. And you have to use them to your advantage.
Yeah.
Like if I'm in a hotel room and I'm getting the wrong reflection, how about we put the microphone up behind a curtain and use that as my, or place it in this part of the room so that the instrument of a vocal reacts well to that space.
Yeah.
Right.
Just a quick shout out to Scott. Scott, we are live. So if you have any questions, fire away. Feel free. And there's actually a good question coming in here from Evan Shea. Hey, Evan. So, Jason, what do you find is the biggest challenge of recording different rappers in different environments? If you could bring it down to one challenge. Because it seems like there could be
I'd say for the new stuff, right? For the first session clients, right? Where you don't have the relationship and you don't know what it is they want or how, you run off of what it is right? Because once you get to know somebody, it's pretty easy. Once you get to know somebody, then you can fly with them. And the challenge, which is the fun part, is figuring it out immediately. And I think the template helps a lot with that, right? So you for the challenge, you kind of take away all the technical stuff. The challenge isn't the technical, because we've got that. We've spent the time to make sure that isn't an issue. It's like, it's like filming, right? You make sure your lighting's right, and you make sure you have the right equipment and that you're in focus, but you don't have to worry about that again. What you're worrying about is capturing angles and how that person and what that person is giving you, right? And reacting to that. And it's always moving and it's always flowing. So the challenge is to flow, right? The challenge is to be in the moment and to create and to develop as you go. And that's across the board. whether it's a female vocalist or a male vocalist or, somebody that's, I mean, there's so many types of people, but you take the psychology, I think. And that, that's the fun part. And that's what I try to focus on, right? Because it comes back to that performance. So like I said, we enter a room, we identify the plan, right? We execute the plan, and then we trust our tools to do the job that they need to do. And then we focus on the moment.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. And that's the fun part.
Cool. Yeah. Very cool. So let's talk about the tools a little bit. For those of you, a lot of folks would probably have watched your sort of setup and template walkthrough that we've done with you. If not, then you guys will find this in the comments. But there's a quick comment here from Joe Davis. What's your plugin chain on UAD? Do you put the Sphere plugin first and then others? So we should probably run through that just real quick for those of you who haven't watched that, and then talk a little bit about some specific questions when it comes to that template. So I'm going to switch over to your screen, Jason. So there we go.
Cool. So I'm just going to go to the I had the settings set up for maybe using the microphone, but I put the AirPods in because I was more comfortable. But so we've got our channel in stereo, right? L22 has 2 microphone outputs for the dual capsules. So the channel's in stereo, and you put console in mute. You have that channel, the stereo track, in record mode, right? And then I place my 88RS in unison. Mm-hmm. I rock between, depending on the vocalist. I was working with somebody yesterday that was singing pretty softly, so I was up at like 32 or whatnot. But for somebody that's giving you a little bit of air, 26 to 28, I'll rock.
That's the input gain.
Yeah, for the gain, and compression engaged on the 88RS and in link, and the settings I use all the time are the +3, 10 o'clock, and noon, and in the insert is where we put the Townsend plugin, and that goes directly into Pro Tools. Yeah. Right. So we're not actually monitoring through console. We're monitoring through Pro Tools. So 88RS in unison and the Townsend plugin in insert, record mode, muted. And
then you switch over to Pro Tools.
Yeah, and then we go to Pro Tools.
Jason, before you go there, just want to touch on a couple of points there. Can you switch back to the console view? So, just want to point out that, of course, this is how you do it. You don't have to do it that way, but this is the way you've
of course, yes.
You've grown to love working with Sphere.
And I can talk about the reasons why.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. And I mean, obviously, a lot of folks are out there that want to monitor through console, and you can certainly do that. You could run other plugins on that insert. You could have compression after the Sphere plugin. You could have EQ after the Sphere plugin. What's important to note is that whatever you have in the unison slot is actually going to get printed, regardless of whether you in monitor mode or record mode. Always gets printed.
Most definitely.
And so by the way, I'm actually doing my voice right now through the same signal chain. So I'm actually on the 416 model because that works well for my voice, but I have the same settings for the Neve 88RS.
I like this one. It's for my voice.
The 12A, yeah. It's awesome. Cool. And so for those of you who haven't watched this, I've just shared the link in the comments. So check it out. And then, so you're going through that chain. You're not doing any processing after the Sphere plugin on the way in, but you're committing to that sound that you're getting with the Neve with the Sphere plugin, and then you're going into Pro Tools. Do you ever use the EQ in the Neve plugin as well, in the Neve Unison Pre?
No.
No. Okay.
No. The reason I keep this the way I do is because I'm getting out of my own way. Here, flip cameras real quick so I can talk to. Who asked this question?
This was about like putting Sphere plugin first, and then others. That was Joe Davis. Yeah.
Joe. Okay, Joe. So you I'm treating this like a real world environment. Okay. So in the studio, you have the microphone going to the preamp, going to the compressor, going into your input, right? And we'll say it's an HD system and you're running into an Avid IO. Okay. A good rule of thumb is you're balancing with compression. You're just, in a lot of cases, kissing, so that the higher parts and the lower parts are more consistent. So you don't have to go in and automate the low and the highs because you're already doing so much. When I'm recording, I'm editing all the excess space and adding all sorts of sauce while I go. The last thing I want to do is clip gain the lower parts and the higher parts so that they're leveled. And I do still for things, but really what you're doing is you're just giving a little compression so that you can have a flatter signal, right? On a pure input, right? If you wanted to monitor through console, which I have, when I didn't have the power that I had on my Mac Mini, I would run, Pro Tools at a full buffer size. I don't want to lose anybody, but because then my session would be able to handle, right? So like if I got thrown on a session, I didn't have anything, and all I had was an Air, and it had no power. Well, I'd have to run at the highest buffer just to get the session going. So you'd be monitoring through console and maybe adding a little reverb and stuff to capture that. But in my opinion, it's nowhere close to going in through a chain. And Pro Tools, it's tailored with the sends and the and the real stuff, right? I keep it very simple on the way in because I do all the processing in Pro Tools.
Yeah. So, for those of you who haven't watched the walkthrough video, you're running a Mac Mini, pretty much decked out, right? If I remember correctly. And then the Apollo Twin Mark II and the Sphere and the Sphere microphone with the plugin, and then you're running Pro Tools Ultimate, and we can switch to that now. And it's fascinating, and this comes back to a question that we got via email from Jay Smash. Latency and all of that, and so with your system, it's actually a Pro Tools. It's a native system. You're not running HD, and you have a pretty complex template, I would say, for tracking, and yet you're able to run it natively.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 sends.
Yeah.
Right. With a whole bunch of stuff on them. I have my record tracks, and it's 176 samples.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's awesome. That's real. Yeah. That's real.
Calculate it. It's not very much latency.
No, not at all.
And all the tunes are up here. I use Autotune Artist because for the latency and just for processing, it's easier. I can get a lot more of these guys going. But do you want me here? I'm gonna switch over audio.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Take this up a little bit. A. Check.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You could even give a little more if you wanted to. So this is going through your live mic, and you're doing this all on your Mac Mini, on your actual rig, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Usually when I snap in a mic and I get a little bit of clipping. But so yeah, I'm running tune here. Let's get rid of that. But my test is I'm getting a lot of room in here. I would have, I have no treatment in here, and I don't really record in this space. But I snap, and that's probably one of the quickest transients to hear any latency.
Right.
But even with a vocal, I can hear milliseconds, and I'm pretty hard on myself, even in the studio environments when I'm bringing in a microphone to preamp to compressor, to making sure that latency is okay.
Okay, so we were talking about your template and what you're doing there. Obviously, that's available for people to watch offline. But there's something here. Again, Jay Smash's question. Why are you not running Autotune on your way in? If I may ask, do you ever do that?
Yeah. So Autotune. So then you would commit to the tune setting.
Right.
And when you take the drive signal into Pro Tools, tune is being put in after. You could commit if you were comfortable with printing tune.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of options today with different type of tune processes that I would want the raw recording unprocessed. So I choose to record without tune, and I know I have I have the UAD tune, but I process tune in the box.
Yeah.
And I do that too because sometimes the way that a performance is done calls for a little bit more, or or it calls for a little bit less.
Right. Yeah.
And I can do that on the fly. And I've integrated my iPad with that Luna software now, so that I can give a client the iPad and they can actually have control of their tune settings. So if you're not familiar with that, go check it out.
Yeah, what is it? It's I'm new to that.
Luna.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the DAW that UA just launched.
No, I believe it's Luna.
Okay.
It's in my backpack.
Interesting.
Yeah. There you go.
Luna display. Oh, how cool. Okay. And so,
it's kind of like that new, Catalina. They do the essentially you're giving OS another screen over
gotcha.
Wi-Fi.
Gotcha.
Like an AirDrop.
Yeah.
AirPlay. Sorry.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they can control with the iPad. They can control Autotune.
Yep. And
cool.
On the fly, they can be in the booth, and it's all over Wi-Fi. So then I put the tune on the screen itself, and it fits perfectly.
Awesome.
It's amazing, and that's really what I got it for.
Yeah.
And so it's a third screen, and you can walk around with it and do whatever you want. But putting it on a mic stand or putting it in the client's hands or having it to the side, they can get themselves dialed in. Now, we do that very fast, and I use my ears, but if you have somebody that's, really involved in that process, it gives them a lot of accessibility. And the latency is really low. I think it's better than AirPlay. The resolution, I think, picks up the retina.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pros to this little piece here, which I've been having a lot of fun with.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I gotta check that out. Very cool. So let's dive into a couple more questions here. Let's see. We got Fred Lane via Instagram. I'm using the Sphere L22 with the emulation of the Sony C800G, and you're running the UAD Neve 1073 unison preamp, and then going into a CL1B Mark II compressor. And he's asking for a vocal chain template or something like that. But generally, he's saying that I'm still learning about gain staging, and I'm trying to get my vocals to be between -12 and -14 when recording. Can you talk a little bit about gain staging? Because I think a lot of folks are struggling with that a little bit.
Sure. Gain staging to the output. So we talked about the vocal being the instrument, right? Mm-hmm. The thing you have to remember when setting gain for anything is the level at which your instrument is. So for a vocal, if somebody's really loud, like I used to work with this one artist that had operatic levels. He was so loud.
Right.
And that was with a pad on the microphone and taking the preamp to like 15. And I think in some cases he almost distorted the diaphragm. He was so loud.
Wow.
So I also come in at about -14.
Okay.
I shoot for about -12 to -14. Mm-hmm. I like the headroom for processing, and I've had a couple conversations with a buddy engineer friend of mine about the headroom of an actual plugin being at like -18 for the sweet spot, right?
Right. I guess it depends on the plugin a little bit too, and some have like settings where you can adjust that. But yeah, that sounds
I mean,
right.
Yeah, from what I've heard, that's a sweet spot. But I come in hotter than that. I don't run too pure. But yeah, so identifying and hearing immediately where the input is. There's dynamics in a vocal too. So if you set a vocal to where it's coming in at like -14, those louder dynamics are going to come up, right? And that's probably where he's like, whoa, why is it going so far up?
Yeah.
That just went 3 times the loudness, and now I'm at 0, or it just dropped down 3 times as low, right? Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so we're getting a rough estimate with the gain, mm-hmm. right? We're getting kind of close. And then with a little bit of compression, right, we're then evening that space out. And I think if he's just getting started, I'd recommend, not doing too much, just throwing the MK2 on there to
the tube tech, the CL1B,
to achieve what we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Sorry, the CL1B.
Mm-hmm.
The second one sounds better to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that evens it out and makes it a lot easier. And then what you want to remember with the CL1B is leave output just 0 to start, mm-hmm. and leave threshold 0. And there's a couple inputs and stuff, and I've spent a lot of time with the CL1B live, but you can check your input coming in, right? Mm-hmm. Make sure you're not coming in too hot on your input, and then you can check the output and your gain reduction. And, the gain reduction in the real life is very little. And I feel like it's a little bit more exaggerated in the box, mm-hmm. by a few dB. But still, I would never come in. I might let it spike to 6, but 3, I'm just,
Yeah, you want to be safe.
Just barely, under there. Yeah. Even, in the studios, I'm at like 1. Mm-hmm. And so if you have your output at 0 and your threshold at 0, and you're watching your gain reduction, then it's all really controlled by your input gain.
Yeah.
Right. And the trim knobs and stuff. And then there's other tricks to get more saturation by giving a little bit more input gain, as long as you're not distorting, mm-hmm. and dropping back trim. But I think for the most part, starting out, just make sure you're in a ballpark. Take the CL1B, just lightly even out, and then when you're monitoring and you're looking at your DAW, if you got to move the output a little bit so that you're in a range that you're comfortable with, because my template's made for -12 to 14.
Yeah.
So
So everything
So
you
I
have set
come
up,
in-
it expects a certain level, all the multiband and compression and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you were coming in at -3, right, then all the compressor settings would be hitting at 10 dB more
Yeah.
than they should be because your input gain's higher.
Yeah.
Right. So, it's very important to have a reference for me, so that I can be as fast as possible. I don't have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah.
Then I fine tune where I need to, but it's also dialed that I don't really have to. And I can worry about that performance that we've been talking about. So I think bringing up the input gain is really important, because everything in there, even to where I drop down, I have effects levels and my send levels too, your send levels, right? So say your reverb is at -27, right? That's set for a -14 or -12 input, right? But if you were coming at 3, it would sound like a ton of reverb. Or if you were coming in, at -18, it would be less, right? Or -20. So, even your sends react to that input.
So it seems like the bottom line is here a little bit too. Once you've found a good spot to be in, and once you've built your template around that, and you talk a lot about the importance of having a template in the video we've done. But once you have that established, it's really important to be consistent from one session to the next. So, you've got everything dialed in. You don't need to worry about those levels anymore, because once you hit that certain spot on the way in, it's going to work out, down the line.
Yeah, exactly. And then again, the technical disappears more so, and you get to listen, and you get to be creative, and you get to enjoy that challenge that we talked about earlier as well.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite models in the Sphere collection? I mean, I know you have both the core collection and Putnam and Ocean Way, but you kind of mix and match, if I remember correctly. And this also comes back to a question from Shane Taylor via Instagram. LD 251 versus C800. Both cost, in the real world, they cost like $10K. Which one do you choose? And generally, how do you choose what mic model you're going to go for with a certain artist?
Yeah, so I have a few favorites. The LD 800, right? I love. I just did another track the other day. We recorded the whole track with the L22, with the 800 model. And then we went into a studio and we needed to get 4 more lines. And I threw up the C800 with full confidence that I wouldn't have to touch anything. Right. And I recorded those vocals with the C800. And I just dropped them down to my lead tracks that I had the L22s recorded on, and didn't EQ any differently. And I didn't hear a difference. Right. So I'm really comfortable with the 800. And the 251, I like the Bill Putnam E. The Bill Putnam 67. The Bill Putnam 12A.
Yep.
I love too for like acoustic guitars.
Oh, gotcha. So when you record those in stereo?
You can. You have so many options with the L22. It's amazing. I mean, if I wanted to record in stereo with 2 cardioid patterns, I could, or, I could do so many different things. I did that for a record that's probably going to be coming out this year.
Cool.
Yeah. And so to choose between the two, I think, is a loaded question. It really depends on the vocalist. And trusting your ears, and if you're getting started and you're figuring it out for yourself, you can, record. Don't put a console in record mode. Yeah. Monitor through console. Record the vocalist. Get a few takes, and then in post in the DAW, you can then change microphones and figure out what it is that you love. I do it on the fly. I can do it within seconds. I can run through, 5, 6, 7 microphones and know which one works best for the artist. I think there's also a choice of genre,
Right.
but really it's really the vocalist.
Do you save channel strip presets then for different artists, or how do you take notes when you?
No, and I was doing that with in the DAW, where I was like saving the console settings and stuff.
Sure.
But it was really frustrating to me because every time I opened up the session, it was loading the stuff that I didn't want it to.
Yeah.
And I mean, if there's, I kind of keep it. You keep your notes, session notes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You would write, if I had a session, I would know that I used a C800 or 1073 or a 3102 or whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's, try to keep notes of what you're doing, or if you want to, save the channel strip. I've done it. I do it sometimes.
Yeah. Cool. There's another question here from Evan coming in via Facebook Live. What are some common mistakes you see inexperienced or young audio engineers make to avoid when recording rap or pop vocals?
You're talking too much. I would say that. Our job is, I think, professionalism is overlooked today. And I think with what it is we do as recording engineers, I think if the artist could magically sit in front of any space and just think something,
mm-hmm.
and it did what they wanted and they could record, then they would choose that over having an engineer there to record them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think we're there to help facilitate some technical stuff, but coming up, I think it's really important to know boundaries and to really study some of the greats. And I'd say, putting in the time and understanding the philosophy behind that environment, right? A lot of the young guys just are doing too much. And I think it's awesome, with the right people that you trust that are helping you, right? But you do it in the wrong situation and it's going to go really badly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only way to truly understand it is to make those mistakes,
right,
on your own, so that you really get it. I think for some of my mentors that have taught me, which is a great list, I think what I learned is to talk less.
Talk less and get out of the way, maybe too.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your session. You're there to be 5 steps ahead of if somebody's pulling out a guitar, make sure the channel's created for the guitar input and the preset and the cable's plugged in and it's sitting by where they need. And if they need a tuner, it's there and the pick's on the side, right? And it's about, seeing those and then bursting out and making sure it's done and getting back in and nobody even saw you do it. Right. So it's, I think, I try to speak when spoken to and stay out of the way,
mm-hmm.
To help facilitate the energy of that client.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, let's see if we can cover just a few more questions here. So this one also came in from via Facebook from Siran Aryant. I'm probably mispronouncing that name. My apologies about that. I'm notoriously bad for pronouncing some of those names. So the question is, do you think it's possible, and this is obviously a pretty loaded question as well, do you think it's possible to record vocals with a with the Sphere and the LD800 model that can cut through the mix, like the songs "Life Is Good" by Drake and "War" by Drake, that were probably recorded with an original C800G. And what he's referring to is sort of the same presence and harmonic richness. Do you have any thoughts and specific advice on that?
I can't speak too much on what Drake does. I've never worked with him. I would say the cool thing about Drake is high end comes from his vocal in his music. It's heavily processed, and I'm gonna say if you want to get that Drake sound, you should talk to Drake's engineer. But yeah, I know what I would do to get something that sounded similar.
And I actually think that listening to his vocal versus the track is actually a pretty essential piece of advice, because if you have a beat that has 10 different hi-hats and they're all super busy and super bright, and then you're trying to put a vocal on top of that and then expect that to sound like Drake, it's probably going to be an uphill battle, right?
Yeah, I think production plays a huge part in his sound, and I know that I would cut a ton of low end and boost the mid and top end to an unrealistic value that I would technically think might be wrong. Because I think a lot of the boundaries that artists are breaking today are technically wrong,
right?
By the standard books that we all came up on and read about, and and I think there's reasons for that, but I think it's exciting too that you can hear and make the choice for yourself. Right.
Okay, cool. So cutting a lot of low end, more than you'd think, boosting the highs.
Yeah,
that
probably
kind of thing.
Pretty high. It'd probably come up to like, I don't know, almost 150, 200, 250 boosting. I mean, the mids, a ton. Yeah, top end a ton, and just really curving with EQ. I think a lot of the sound's going to come with curving EQ in a slope that kind of looks like a mountain. Right. From low to high. Yeah. I think that would be a good starting point. Squash the crap out of it, and and
get somebody in the booth that sounds like Drake. Yeah. But in terms of competitiveness, if you want to call it that, between the LD800 model and an original Sony C800G, which the LD800 is modeled after.
Yes.
I mean, do you have any reservations about that?
No, not at all. Like I said, I just did a track the other day. I've done countless now, where I can confidently go between the C800 digitally and the C800 in a room, and not worry at all about the two working together interchangeably without any noticeable differences. Right. Cool. The differences would come from actual gear, right? The outboard gear that you're coming through. Yeah. And the tone that's created there. But
of course the inconsistencies in that gear as well, right? I mean,
and the inconsistencies from microphone to microphone, too. But the 800's a good example because they're pretty consistent, right?
And they're still in production.
Yeah.
And there's a Rich the Kid track as well where that happened, right? That's Money Talks?
Yeah, Money Talk.
Oh, Money Talk.
So we were at a Vegas suite, and the song was recorded, and we needed to punch in the second half of the verse, and that was when I actually figured it out for myself, because I was using the chain, the 800, the 88 RS, and going in, and I was dropping down, and that's when I was like, I can't hear a difference.
Yeah.
And when I asked him and I found out it was the 800, that was a really exciting moment for me.
Because you didn't know what it was tracked with originally.
I've done it a couple times. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know what originally it was, and I've also had where before that I knew that we were working with something special because I had a session with a 414, and I didn't have that 414, and we continued recording that song, and I put up a 414, and they worked.
Yeah,
and so I was going in with okay. Cool. So, because I think what Townsend's doing is fresh and it's new and it's 800, but there's a little different to it on as a soul. It's so minute. I think it's new. I think it's new sounding, but it's the same microphone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different model. It's a different physical microphone, right? Like we're talking about. So, and I happen to really like Townsend's version of the C800.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. I think we can get into maybe two more questions, and then I know you're a busy man. We got to wrap things up here. But there's just a question that came in from Jonathan Bossman via Facebook. Do you use different mic placement with different people or locations, or is it more important to be consistent throughout for the production phase? And do you change the pattern in the LP2 a lot, or do you just stick to cardioid?
This is for vocals?
Yeah. I'm assuming so.
Yeah. So, I think vocals are pretty standard across the board. I do about 4 fingers. Mm-hmm. But really, you just want to make sure that the diaphragm's close enough to the mouth. They're going to be moving around and going. That's going to be, I do a few tricks sometimes. If I'm getting a little bit of a harsh sound, I might lower the diaphragm a little bit. So they're coming in over the diaphragm. Mm-hmm. You can get big differences just from, the vertical placement, moving that. And I recommend that he try it and experiment with what happens. We do it really fast. You look at some of the greats on some real mic techniques. Al Schmidt, who identifies the instrument and places the microphone appropriately to blend, right? Sometimes I'll have in a studio, I'll have a 57 out just for writing. Somebody wants to pick up a microphone. They always have something live that's coming through the speakers without feedback. And then we have the microphones that you can hop on and actually get some vocals with. And in some cases we use that ref stuff. And, but when you're using, your main your record microphone, I always just start out with pop filter, about 4 fingers from the diaphragm. And sometimes I'll angle down above or, straight on, but diaphragm's just about front of the mouth. Yeah. And then you just let the artist work and not worry about that so much. And go to a place that's not really there. And that's, kind of get lost in the sonics. Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I think, from what you've told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the times, especially particularly when you're working in these non-studio environments, big Airbnbs, hotel rooms and whatnot, you can't even be that picky about it because your primary objective is, number one, getting out of the way, and number two, capturing something that is good to use in the track when it comes to reflections and that kind of thing.
I'm not picky about. I am, but I just do it in a way that I don't think. Like I said, when I identify and I execute the placement for where the microphone sits in a space, acoustically, that's where I chose it to live. In some cases, stuff gets moved around based off of the energy, right? And you rock with that. If that's the situation. A lot of the times where you set the microphone is where you record. and the consistency of that is though where the vocalist is on the microphone.
Got it.
And if I was 10 inches away, versus sometimes I'll get a really nice pop vocal with an 800 by having them really, really up on it, and you could change it by an inch, pull an inch back, and then all of a sudden that it's like almost taking the high and just perfectly saturating almost. And mic technique is a really important thing. I mean, the greats had the best microphone technique, and today, it's done a little differently, but move on and off the mic and all that dynamic that's recorded in, adds to the feel of the record.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about polar patterns? I remember, I think, a story that you told me where you were actually playing with polar patterns to kind of get the cleanest, result. What was that?
You give us quite a bit of you give us a few options, which is amazing.
We do, right?
Also, when I sat down and I decided, or I was deciding on a microphone. Yeah. I needed the most versatile microphone on the market, which is a daunting task, and I looked at a lot of options. And because I run in such a tight setup, I needed one to do everything. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? But with that story, I was in a bad space, and the cardioid was picking up, and I didn't have any treatment with me, my reflection stuff, and so I chose that hypercardioid pattern, which really got a lot of the room out of the way and gave me that direct signal. And I think that's a really cool function of the options that you give us, because you can throw it on anything. Ribbons come bidirectional, and what would it sound like, to throw that direct signal on? But for the more standard choices, I think playing around with the that direct straight on really helped in the environment where the reflections in the room were getting in the way. Yeah. Which I'm a big fan of.
And then we touched on it very briefly, but the Kaotica Fat Boy, that's sort of your last resort, if you will, if nothing else works.
It is. But it's because the eyeball, the Fat Boy, it really gets rid of everything. It gets a ball around the microphone. So it takes out all the space, essentially, and just gives you what's coming out in front. And it happens, I think, for what they've created in the most natural way, but it's also very unnatural when you listen to it dry. Then you get a little bit of a bump in the low mid, which comes across the whole frequency, and the top end is also dipped, right? But I feel really comfortable using it because I add a little bit of EQ, to even those out, right? So I dip a little bit of the low mid, and I throw a little bit of shelf on for the top end, and boost a little bit of that mid range, and I get in a place that isn't the sound of it without it, but it's also a sound that I'm really happy with. Yeah. Right. So it's something, what we're looking for is something usable in a space that would otherwise be unusable. Yeah. So it's kind of like it's the tool to save the recording, if you will. And you have to EQ it more because it does
does affect the sound, and that's something that we found a lot too. And but you just make it work. And I just want to mention that Chris Townsend, he wrote a really cool blog post generally about avoiding boxiness in vocal recordings, and this by using the off-axis correction. And I just put the link in the comments, and I have it up on screen right now.
Super powerful, powerful.
Because we also got a comment from A.M. Burton, because he finds that there's this boxiness, this buildup in the low mids that happens, and that he doesn't like. And so bottom line is, yes, that happens. There's nothing you can't get rid of it entirely, but you can use subtractive EQ like what you're doing, and you can use off-axis correction built into Sphere to counteract that a little bit. There's another comment that touches on that, again from Joe Davis. With the Kaotica eyeball, do you have a problem with calibrating the mic front and the rear? There's a very simple answer to that. You don't deal with calibration because you're using an Apollo with linked input channels. So when you do that, you don't have to manually calibrate.
I take that out of the equation. I don't run the analog equipment, and I think that's why I love the setup so much. The noise floor is zero, right? And there's no noise in there that I don't have to worry about what type of gear I'm running through. And it's been proven rather recently that we can get some really good sounds without it. So with the digital preamps, there's no calibration.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, there's a bunch more questions here, but I think we have to wrap it up at this point. You got stuff to do too. But I just, want to say thank you for doing this with us. Again, my apologies. Thank you
so much for having me.
Yeah, this has been great fun. My apologies about the dropped stream. I'll look into it. I think it's a Facebook problem, unfortunately.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, it still sucks. But Jason, if you're cool, maybe you could have a look at the comments as well. I know you joined the group.
I'll go check them out right now.
There's a couple of comments here.
And also come to Instagram. I spend a lot more time on there. It's JASONG. Hit me in my DMs. Right. I try to sort through some of the stuff that's being requested, but I'd love to continue a conversation with anybody that wants to have a real conversation. About audio.
Very cool. And that's it's been such a pleasure working with you. You're super passionate about what you do, which is always fun. And I really like sort of your record anywhere approach to rap vocals and to pop vocals in particular. And I should mention that we have another really cool interview with you coming out that we shot at Sunset Sound a while ago.
I don't remember a word I said.
But there's some really great stories in there, and I think we'll have this.
I had a blast hanging out with you, though.
Yeah, and we went into overtime. Yeah, shout outs to the folks at Sunset Sound who really let us hang out there for quite some time. And Evan, who's been commenting, he was one of the camera operators there. So we had a good time, and so that's going to be a video that's coming out. We have actually a really in-depth blog post about stereo recording coming out very soon. Something completely different to recording vocals, but kind of the top 5 stereo techniques that you need to know or that you should check out if you're serious about recording. And of course, I should also mention that a lot of the news and announcements that we have coming on are going to be sent out via email. So. If you have the chance, make sure to check out our email list, and I'm going to post a link to the sign up here as well. And with that being said, I'm super excited about all the good stuff that Jason, you're doing. We'll be sharing whatever new records come out that prominently feature the L22. And we'll talk very soon. And we're already planning the next Q&As, so definitely. Watch the space for the next Q&A announcements. We have some really cool people that we're talking to at the moment. And we're having a blast.
Yeah, thank the team for me.
Yeah, I will. Eric is on the stream as well, so he's been commenting.
Thank you, brother.
It's so much fun and such a pleasure working with you, Jason. So we'll
you too.
Talk soon. All right?
All right, bro.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and see you soon.